Hello everyone, Kurt Olford here, and welcome back to another episode from Holfeder Labs. Today we continue on with the sword in one hand section, and we are going to be going into a play that in many cases, as people have depicted it in images and fighting and sparring, etc., kind of gets to a spot where we kind of wonder, how do we get there? And what are the actions that we've taken here? And this goes then to the play where he talks about, I have found you open, and I can pass forward with using apprezzare. It depicts the person being cut into the throat. The big thing about this play right here for me is, again, for my understanding of this all is that essentially, if everything comes off of a master concept, then we are building off of that continuously in this. And if we have the cover that's been made from the master to the first play that we just recently saw last week, it also is applicable in this situation right here as well. I also feel that it is very important to also note the interpretations that other people have put out there, which I 100% agree with. I think that is a plausible situation here, because you can't just look at one image and expect Fiore to say, yep, everyone is attacking this way right here. And we're going to talk about that here in greater detail. But with that being the case here, before I get talking too much about this, let's take a look at the video. Okay, so this week we're going to be looking at the next play within the sword in one hand, and the big focus I want to talk about here is that how essentially, we don't have a definite concept as far as what Fiore wants us to cross. However, one thing that we do have is we have his 7 blows that come at us right here that are depicted later on. We also have the lessons of line we talked about for the dagger. I talked about a few weeks ago how the dagger and the sword in one hand also are very connected, at least in my opinion. And we're going to put those kind of concepts together here, because at the end of the day, it doesn't necessarily matter. If this person's striking from here, you're making a shape. You're making a shape. You're making a shape. It doesn't matter. This is the extension point that we're coming to. And that's a big part about how this interpretation for me works, because later on, we don't know why he's in this position. We don't care. Notice, in my opinion, I don't think Fiore cares either. Why? He cares more that you're going to be able to do something off of it than not. Okay, so the image this week we're talking about is this. And in this image right here, all we see right here is my sword's right here. Imagine that Connor's on that passing foot forward here, and in somehow, some form or fashion here, I have the blade here across his neck. His right foot, he has his left foot forward, and his blade is up. So this is what we see right here as far as this goes. I found you open, right? And if I do a passing step forward, I can go to apprezzare. Okay, there's a few things right here. Is he talking about this leg, some of this leg? We don't know. But ultimately right here, again, I don't think it necessarily matters, because it depends upon how the crossing happens and the position of it. So there's a couple ways in which we might find ourselves in this concept. So the first way right here, if we go off of what we did last week as far as covering in and then turning off and then striking, we might in that situation find ourselves in a way that allows us to get to a crossing. So sword in one hand, he strikes in here. He's striking for this part of my body here. That's what we're looking at here first. As I come up with it, boom, I have this cross, right? So in this case right here, I can either turn this straight down into the body. That's one way in which we deal with this. So strike comes in one more time here, this, and we're turned into the position here where we made this. Now, from here, he says, I can pass forward, and I can put you into beats, breaks, or apprezzare. The pass could be this right here, which allows me to, because I've made this cover right here, which again, the right foot's forward, and then here I'm going to move in to stopping the person. That is one variant right there that we're talking about here. Because ultimately here, remember, later on, you've already seen it, the turns of the sword. So, all I've done with this right here, I'm using volta stabile of my feet and of my hand, using an incremental offline into the blow, right? Here, it comes like this, and from here, I'm going to turn straight back down. I'm going to utilize, from this position here, a mezzovolta of my hand to strike into that opening quarter. And then with a passing step, I'm in a spot where I can do all sorts of manner of things that happen with this, okay? So, that is variant 1, and we'll review them afterwards at the very end. The second variant that we've taught that has been seen in many other accumulations, and personally, I think it's very viable, because if there's 7 blows, there's 7 ways to parry blows, there's 7 ways to break blows, bind blows, etc. It doesn't necessarily matter. The one that we typically see, the one that I typically see out there as far as an interpretation is that as he strikes in with this, it's a false edge into a strike, which also has a lot of viability to it as well. The trouble with this one for me is, if this is, and again, if, based off how I see this, if this is my shot, as he's shooting in with this, this is the angle of his blow. So therefore, when I come across with this, he's still got momentum, which may have him turn up and strike me into the guts. Okay? So I don't necessarily like that as much. If I would prefer, and I said I would prefer in this case, if the blow is coming from this angle, I want to break it onto the other side. So that would be much more of a this way coming in. However, that's not what the image shows. So to make off that interpretation, which I do have things in some viability, maybe he's talking about if the guy came from this position and he's striking in this regard. Yep. Now I have made this covering position, and now we have the position which is shown in the manuscript, which allows me to come right here and then come across. Personally, the lesson of this right here that I think is happening is that ultimately if you deflect the blade and put it offline and have a covering line that's right here, I am then able to move into a position where I can do a deeper grapple, which is shown later on. Okay? So again, variant 1 plays off of the first covering mechanism we talked about. So I'm going to come up into this, making that cover piece, strike, turn, strike. So here, this works very nicely because as the blade, if he sticks really hard, tight into me, as I open this up here and turn and come across, his arm is stopped, his head is taut, everything here in place. No matter, this is just an image in motion, in moment. At speed, this is very devastating. And then with a pass, I'm in a spot right here where I can work all the nasty things that I've learned already in previous lessons. That's variant 1. So again, one more time here, volta stabile, boom, mezzovolta, turn, and come right back down with the volta stabile of the hips, and then using a passare into the body. That's variant 1. Other variant that may be the case right here is if he's striking from this side, which in this case right here, I'm going to turn. So ultimately in this case, what I'm using here is I'm using mezzovolta of the hand, so I'm going from this position to turn over. So remember we talked before, use mezzovolta with volta stabile of my feet. The strike comes in, boom. I have found you open. Strike and strike. One more time. This. In both variants right here, either way, we are not just shutting down and hitting the guy. We are also making sure that when we do strike the Fendente line, we are also making sure that he's pinning his arm. So we can kind of see the angle. Just make the position, please. This is what we're talking about as far as the line goes. You see it's on over his arm here and it's in the neck. If he tries to push across into me, it's going into his neck. If he tries to retreat away from me, I can push into his body. And like I said, I can pass forward and utilize apprezzare, breaks and binds, as the maestro has said. That is the interpretation in which how I see this being viable right here, and the lessons that potentially come out of that within this play.
So as you can see with the video here, again, I demonstrate both crossing points. And one thing that's very important about this right here is that, Fiore is either standing against the people, those three guys in the very beginning, or it's coming out of that position of the sword in one hand off to the side. Both of those right there, to me, signify the avenue of approach that may be happening when it comes down to counter-striking against somebody, and maybe a possible consideration for people to look at. Regardless of what the play is or is not, the part that I think is very important in this is that we have to look at this with the four concepts when it comes down to the sword itself. Again, he puts it later on in the manuscript about what you can do with the sword as far as striking, covering, binding, and breaking. However, just because it's later on does not mean that these are not things that go throughout the entire manuscript. In fact, as we've already seen, the terms of mezzovolta, that half turn, even though it is introduced in the sword section, he talks about it within Sixth Master Dagger. So that in itself tells me that this right here is a reflective book. It is not a how-to of every situation. It is ways to build and layer upon different foundations. This right here, especially, I've heard lots of people talk in regards to, some of the German concepts when they talk about like Duplerien, the doubling, where you use someone's pressure against, or mutation, you're counter thrusting off of a break. The thing that's very interesting about plays like this right here is because of how, open to interpretation these plays are, I don't think the maestro really gives a damn about, it's exactly this thing right here. The point is that he's saying here is like, you have concepts, here's some other concepts, the functionality together here create these outcomes. And that to me is the greater lesson of what Fiore is trying to say here. I particularly like the discovery here on this one because ultimately, the reason why I bring up the whole concept of the Duplerien, the doubling, is because essentially right here, I think this is much more the tactical mentality that perhaps even Liechtenauer was trying to get across is as I double across, make sure you secure that person's arm because you're not trying to double tag out here when it comes down to these things. It just doesn't, it's not what you're trying to do. And when you play into those different types of directions right here, we are not only going to strike them, but we're going to constrain somebody. By binding across, striking the neck, striking the arm, and being able to pass into somebody, there's a lot of opportunity right there, which makes this play very enjoyable and fun to work with because of just how unique, in my opinion, it is that I can either beat and come back down, or I can bind and shift across off of that bind to create a break on my own sword. Both, of course, are up to interpretation. With that being the case here, that's going to conclude this video. Tell me what your thoughts are on this. Again, have you seen different interpretations out there? I've seen variances here where they talk about the false edge beat to come right back down. I've seen, and that's one of the more common ones I've seen. But again, if we keep following the sequence here, what are your thoughts about the two interpretations? Love to hear your thoughts on that. To my viewers and subscribers, thank you so much for tuning in. If you are a new viewer, consider liking, subscribing, and sharing with a friend. Don't forget to hit the bell for more content to drop that comes out every week. And thank you so much for stopping by. And as always, everybody, please stay safe out there, train well, and fight on. I will see you all soon.